Hello,
Any
everybody.
stories
Thank
shared
you
in this
for joining us
podcast
for
have
another
had
video.
names and
Shara
details
is still
changed
not
for the
here, but she'll be
confidentiality of
back
clients.
next time,
Any
probably.
resemblance to
Sometimes
someone
we
real is
decide-
coincidental.
We try to decide whether or not we should do videos when she's not here.
Yeah,
Because we just want to take the time off.
yeah, she keeps us productive, is one way of putting it. So today we are going to talk a little bit about changing your mindset to a self-improvement mindset and 3 kind of basic ideas to do that. I don't know, when I think self-improvement mindset, I think it's just the opposite of like beating yourself up pretty much.
Yeah. I think it's worth throwing out there as we get started on this, though. A lot of this is going to be stuff that you've probably heard before, but it's not easy to do, and so we're hoping that some of these strategies can be helpful in accomplishing some of these things, right? Because it really is hard to change your mindset specifically when it's about you.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know about everybody else, but I generally tend to look at myself in the mirror and see all of the things that are less than desirable rather than the things that are desirable. So we're hoping some of these things might help adjust that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The first thing that we had come up with was to not personalize your failures, or personalize failures in general. And when we talk about personalizing in the therapeutic world, personalizing is when we make something about us or make it something that happens in the world mean something about our character or who we are, rather than just recognizing that sometimes things just go wrong, sometimes things don't work out, and it doesn't mean anything necessarily about you. Does that make sense?
It does. In fact, I think yesterday when we were talking about this, you and I, Jayden, one of the thoughts that came to my mind is that when something goes wrong, it's not uncommon to hear something like, oh, God wouldn't give you anything more than you were able to handle.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
At least in this community, that's one that I hear a lot. And sometimes I think, okay, so getting in a car accident was because I needed to be tested for something else, or like I needed to have another challenge in my life. Sometimes car accidents just happen, right? And sometimes it's not your fault. In fact, you hope that the car accident isn't your fault, right? Because then insurance rates go up. But sometimes things happen, and we have to detach ourselves from being the culprit as to why that negative thing happened. I think that's hard to do. But yeah, sometimes things just happen, and failure doesn't necessarily mean it was our fault. Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But that also doesn't necessarily need to be personalized either.
Yeah. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in one of the other points also.
Yeah.
I always think of like, how many times have you seen some YouTube video or something on TV about some billionaire guy, and it's like, oh, and he failed XYZ businesses and blah, blah, blah. Did that have some effect? Was the owner of that business at fault for that sometimes? Maybe, to some extent. But also, like, there are so many things in our life that are out of our control. Like, if you decided to start a business in January 2020 that was a everyone come in person kind of thing, and then COVID happens, your business fails, like, is that really on you?
Yeah, can you imagine, like, opening an indoor playground for kids in January of 2020?
Right, yeah.
Like, yeah.
Your business will fail. But is that reflective that you were a failure? Not really. That was just crappy luck, crappy coincidences and things like that. And so it's important that I always tell my clients, I call it assigning appropriate responsibility. Like, take the correct amount of responsibility for whatever happened, whatever went wrong, but you can't take it all. Because there are very few situations in life where we are the only moving factor and the moving piece.
Yeah, it's hard to be that causal factor in something. You're a contributing factor.
Sure.
But definitely not the causal factor.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And even in those things where you are or you place some level of responsibility, if you can chalk it up to, again, this is the mindset shift, it's hard to do, but if you can shift this to something other than failure, right? I'm human, made a mistake. One of my favorites is I can't be the first or the last idiot to do this, right? There's got to be others that have
Or if
done
you got
this.
in the car, you caused the car accident, it was your fault, it was still an accident.
Yeah. Hopefully you weren't doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, there's this piece of this is if you can find a way to take things that are less than desirable and shift them away from personalizing or personalization. Whether
Yeah.
it's, oops, it was an accident, it was a mistake, it was a learning opportunity, whatever. This takes practice and repetition, but that's step one.
Yeah,
Right?
and be honest about it, because if you take this too far, it could be never taking responsibility for your actions, which
Yeah.
would be a problem.
Yeah,
Which is
that's
not
true.
self-improvement. It's like I said, it's important that we have like an appropriate amount of responsibility for
Yeah,
things.
responsibility is a good character piece. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future
Sure.
video too.
Yeah.
But the second thing that we talked about yesterday, and I liked the way that you talked about this, was this idea of finding silver linings. Tell me what your thoughts were about that.
Maybe I skew like a little bit optimistic just in general, but I not that that's a bad thing, but I think in just about any situation, whether it goes our way or it doesn't, there is a way to find silver linings in it. There's a way to find some part of that that actually was good or that was beneficial to you. I always think of my master's program experience where I was setting up an internship and I had submitted all my paperwork and things to do an internship at a local hospital. And 2 days before the deadline, my person from the school calls me, my advisor, and is like, "Hey, your internship, like, it's not going to work out. We can't get everything settled with them." Like,
With 2 days to bingo.
yep.
Ugh.
And I said, "Okay, so like, what are we going to do? Like, how am I going to get it? Can I just do one of these other agencies you already have contracts with?" And they're like, "Well, it might take a little longer than that, so we'll probably just have to push your graduation back." I was like, "That's not cool. Like, I have this whole plan of I'm supposed to graduate at this time, and my wife was pregnant, and it just was like very upsetting to me. I was very anxious about the whole thing." And I took it to my advisor's boss and all the people up, and they're like, "Yep, sorry, out of luck." And I was really upset about this. And fast forward, my wife and I are actually in the same master's program. She graduates 7 weeks before I do because this classes are in 7-week blocks. And I was just delayed because I had to wait for this internship to start. So I was able to find an internship later on, and because of this whole situation, I ended up in an internship that I think that was more valuable experience-wise for what I wanted to do. And I also graduated kind of at the exact time that you guys were hiring here. And it just happened to work out that way. Call it fate, call it whatever, but because of that very frustrating situation, I can look back and be like, okay, there's actually good things that happened because of this. Would it have been nice to not have to pay for an extra 7 weeks of school and all those kind of things? Yes.
Oh, did they make you pay for it?
Well, I had to stay in classes. Yeah, I couldn't just
yeah.
drop out. So
Good point.
yeah, that for me was like a big silver linings moment where I realized, like, okay, if I'm ever in a situation like this again, I need to not complain so much and freak out and look for potential benefits in this.
Yeah. So keep in mind, my caveat with this is hard to do.
Yep.
And one thing about you is you probably are a little leaning towards the optimism. I actually think that's a good thing. I think I do that too. Sometimes I'm accused of making things sound too easy, though. So make
That's
sure
fair.
that's true.
Yeah, and I didn't realize this until after the fact, right? And I was like, this is where I learned my lesson.
For
and
sure.
I try to apply it now, but it is not it took like a crappy experience and time for my mindset to switch on that.
Yeah. And time, I think, is one of those contributing factors we talked about. In regards to that, I find that this idea of finding silver linings can sometimes be a thought process that people really don't like. And I understand it, and I'm one of those. You know, as I work with people, sometimes the thought process is, why do I always have to look for something good that is in a bad situation? And my answer is, you don't have to. But what's your other option? If you look at everything negative and stay negative, it's so easy to spiral down that black hole that if we can, with a lot of effort, potentially, sit down and say, okay, what can I learn from this experience? And I swear to you, that's like the one phrase I hear all the time. I hate it when people are like, what can you learn? And I'm the same way.
Yeah.
You know, if my wife would be like, well, what are you going to learn from this? I'm like, well, I don't want to learn anything. Well, if you don't want to, you won't, right? So this is maybe even one of the more difficult of the three to do. The answer that I would give to that is you have two options. You can ask the question or you can choose not to. But if you choose not to, you certainly won't find any silver linings.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Win or learn, as I like to say.
Win or learn?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think
That's a good way of looking at it. You optimist.
Yeah. I worked with a client one time who was laid off from their job. And I think illustrates it really well. Like, obviously, this person was very upset and worried about finances and things. Um, Luckily, they had enough to keep them floating for a little while they looked for another job. But we talked a lot about this. Like, okay, well, take advantage of the time that you get to spend with your family and those things. It doesn't take the stress off that you need to also find a job, but it doesn't need to be all bad. And that's the point of the silver linings is, yeah, this situation sucks. I need to fix it because I need income. But also, it's kind of cool that I get to spend more time with my wife and my kids.
You know, you've got me thinking as you say that. If we were to actually sit down and pull out a sheet of paper and a pencil, and if we reflected on 4 or 5 trials that we've been through in our life that just sucked, can you come up with some of those silver linings? And I'll bet with the passage of time, most of us probably can come up with something.
Yeah, I don't think any situation is all bad.
Yeah. It just takes a little bit of effort to focus on it.
Yeah.
And you might have to be removed from it, but...
Yeah. Right. Like, it took me getting a job and being done with school to realize, oh, this all kind of worked out okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you feel that way.
Oh, thanks. And then the last thing we wanted to talk about for this self-improvement mindset was focusing on progress over results.
As I think about this, one of the things that's been in my mind over the last year probably is just this idea of the power in being average. And maybe the idea of progress over results rings true in my mind because I'm dieting for a week and then I eat like trash for a week. And so the progress is also very slow. But we live in a day and age where it's too easy to be focused on the end result and see all the obstacles that take us there.
Yeah. So many things in life are instantly gratifying right now.
Uh-huh. One of the other quotes that I think might go hand in hand with this is the idea that do your best to compare yourself to a previous version of yourself rather than to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we end up doing is we compare our weaknesses to someone else's strengths. And if I look back at who I am today versus where I've been in different spots, yes, there are times where I have been better in the past, but I think overall I'm a more average or more well-rounded individual today in most areas. And honestly, it comes from these small little incremental steps. It's that progress over results piece. But this one can also be a little bit challenging, and I recognize that.
Yeah, because maybe with all 3 of these, I think the most difficult piece in all of them is the time, right? None of them are instantly gratifying things.
Yeah.
Like it all takes continuous effort, continuous trying, and the passage of time of doing these things that leads you from wherever you were 10 years ago to where you are now, whether it's financially or personally or in whatever kind of goals you have. The real problem with focusing on results, I think, is that when, as humans, are we ever like, yep, this is good, this is enough? Like, pretty much never.
Yeah, I don't foresee myself ever being there.
Yeah.
You know?
I like to think if, like, someone showed up with $1 billion, I'd be like, yeah, this is good, I'm good.
I always say I want to try rich people problems.
Yeah, I would like to try them. But we just do this thing to ourselves where we set our finish line and we're like, yep, I'm gonna graduate school and get a job, and that's like, then life's going, then we're cooking.
Oh yeah.
And then you graduate school and you get a job and you're like, okay, what now?
40 more years of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know.
And we just push that finish line all the time, and so it doesn't do us any good to always be watching that finish line in the distance. It's a lot more of a fulfilling and stress-free experience, or maybe not stress-free is the wrong word. Less stressful experience. If we're just focusing on where we're at now and what small improvements we can make on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis.
Let me maybe throw out one personal example that I think might illustrate this because I'm practicing this. I'm not like a master at it, right? One of the things that I've noticed about me, and it's good that Cher not here this week, is I am a very slow mover. I move with purpose. Physically, I'm a quick mover. I like to walk fast, but
you're like the tortoise and the tortoise in the hare.
That's exactly right. But when it comes to decision making, in the last 5 years or so, I've noticed that I've missed out on some good opportunities because I drag my feet. And so one of my goals this year was to make decisions quicker. And although ask Shara, I am not a rapid decision maker
But
by
Shara is.
any stretch. Yeah, and we're a couple days away from October, so it's been 10 months. I've read a book about how the importance of making snap judgments are actually effective. I've actually pulled the trigger on a couple of things that I normally would probably drag out. One of the things I've decided to do recently is I've put a little notebook by my bed, and I don't have the goal of every night writing down my thoughts, but I've made progress doing it. And so my point is compared to where I was, I have done 3 to 5 things probably this year that have helped me make a quicker decision. And I'm not wanting to become impulsive by any stretch, but
I don't think you have to worry about that.
yeah, probably not. But my point is I'm definitely better at it today, 10 months in, than I was in January. And that's progress for me.
Yeah.
Am I as quick of a decision maker as other people? No, definitely not. But I am making progress on that goal, and I can see it over a 10-month period.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, it's perfect.
So,
well, hopefully these 3 ideas can give you something to think about. I think we can't emphasize enough the importance of like time with all 3 of these.
yeah.
It takes time and it takes effort. It doesn't just come easy, and none of us are perfect at it. I think everyone who is good at these things recognizes that it took time and effort and practice. And so don't give up on it. Stay consistent and try some of these things. See if you can't change your mindset a little bit. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We've got other videos for you to check out and more exciting things coming soon. So thank you.